All right. Today, I am joined by a special guest to go through some of the biggest stories in the news, specifically with President Trump. I have Lord Conrad Black. Conrad, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Just some background. Conrad Black is was heavily involved in media. He understands what Trump is up against, good and bad. He's been through legal battles. He's an author, just a very intelligent guy. It was revealed earlier today that President Trump's family has spent upwards of $500 million defending him, defending the Trump Corporation. This is against, all of the different lawfare that has been thrown at him. Do you think that we are done with this, or is this a new trick of the left? Does President Trump need to arrest these people and make sure that this never happens again? What are your thoughts? This is a tremendous amount of money.
I know something about the costs of legal proceedings in the United States. They're horribly expensive. And, well, I am renowned in some circles as a pro-American person. I think you have an utterly horrible justice system. You have a 98%, the criminal justice system in federal cases, you have a 98% conviction rate, 95% without a trial. That is not what Madison and Hamilton and the others meant with the guarantees of the Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendments. I went through that, and it's murder. I won in the end, but it took more than a decade and cost me most of my money. And I'm not a rich man like Donald Trump, but I was a well-to-do man. And American lawyers tend to be extremely rapacious. And it's, as in other countries, it's a cartel, and a 360-degree cartel. And you have such a litigious society. Your constitution can be endlessly reinterpreted in a way that admits a huge amount of legal proceedings and litigation that in Britain or Canada, I'm talking about serious jurisdictions here, not absurd jurisdictions. Countries with a proper judicial tradition. 3/4 of your litigation would be thrown out as frivolous and vexatious. So I'm a great admirer of the U.S., but not of your justice system. On the other hand, as I say to my friends, look, it's a democracy, and if that's how the Americans want to run their country, they have a perfect right to do it, and it's no one else's business. Now, with that said, I think Mr. Trump is a man of such means that he can absorb the 500 million. Secondly, he would have a comeback on his costs to a substantial extent. The only one of those proceedings that produced a conviction, totally spurious though it was, and illustrated the points I was making earlier about the limitations of the system, was the Alvin Bragg spurious prosecution in New York. But the others were abandoned or thrown out, and he would have a right to some, it would vary, and I'm not qualified to say how much, but a significant percentage of his costs would be repaid to him by the prosecutor, essentially the U.S. government. And for the rest of it, he could get a tax treatment on some of it. He's a man of sufficient income and assets that he could use that. But it still is a lot of money, and it indicates that unless you are a wealthy person, you can't fight there. That's one of the reasons why the conviction rate is so heavy. People just can't afford it. They just run you out of money. But as to what he should do about it, you don't want a straight vindictive campaign. But as I understand it, Fannie Lewis is in some legal difficulties herself. And the Attorney General in New York State, Letitia James, she's in some legal difficulties herself, not directly with Trump as an adversary, but in the Lewis case in matters related to him. And so they're entangled in legal problems, and he need not play any role in that. I don't know if he has a right of action in some of the other proceedings. I mean, in my opinion, if he can still do it, James Comey is a man who should be prosecuted. I think he clearly violated a number of serious laws. And then when he had to give evidence under oath, he said 245 times that he did not remember matters that occurred only 2 years before. Now, he's not an elderly man like Joe Biden. He's a man whose memory is perfectly good, other than when he's asked about his own previous delinquencies. And that's a man. I'm not trying to send him to prison. I don't believe in sending nonviolent first offenders to prison, but he's a man who should be doing a lot of community service, helping pick up litter. He's a tall man helping little old ladies get their cats out of trees or something, just as an example for him, and there are a number like that. I don't think the president wants to look as vindictive as his opponents did. But on the other hand, where they have something hanging out, they should be pursued, but not with a view to excessive punishment, but an exposure of what happened. Because this is a longer answer than you wanted, but I think, frankly, your country pressed the guardrails of constitutional democracy with the spurious prosecutions of Trump, following the nonsensical impeachments, following that disgraceful fraud of the Russia collusion business, following the Steele dossier and the directors of the Central Intelligence Agency, National Intelligence Agency, and FBI conspiring to try and put into the media as genuine intelligence that did not need to be corroborated by the media because of the quality of its source, a pastiche of lies and defamations in the Steele dossier. I mean, the combination of all those activities to attack Trump, it came quite close to a full-scale assault on small d democratic government. And everyone in the hereafter has to have a proper disincentive from trying to do it again. Now, on the other side, on the straight political side, it didn't work. It clearly backfired. And that is probably a significant deterrent to anyone in either party trying to do such a thing again. But if some of these people committed crimes, and unless they've managed to skate on side under the Limitations Act, then they should be prosecuted. Not, as far as I'm concerned, so much to send them to prison, but to get it on the record of what they did and have it properly excoriated in the public domain as unambiguously, not as a partisan matter, but as a clear legal fact that they broke the law and they threatened the integrity of the system.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you for that insight. I mean, they tried to neuter him. Now there's a big breaking story coming out this morning that top leaders of Iran have called for fatwa, which is basically to have President Donald J. Trump assassinated. They're calling for a rise in violence if there are sleeper cells in the United States. I'm reading that the FBI, DHS, and counterterrorism, they're all on high alert going into the 4th of July weekend. Do you think that this is smoke and mirrors from Iran? Is this something to take serious? On the one hand, President Trump spared the life of the supreme leader. I don't want to assassinate him. We know where he's hiding. He's safe. On the other hand, now they're saying we need somebody to step up and take out the U.S. president. Your thoughts on that? Want to boost your heart health and make your body function better? Check out Cardio Miracle. I drink this every day since my doctor determined after COVID, my body had nearly zero nitric oxide. This hurts your heart, cardiovascular system, and overall bodily function. Cardio Miracle is the ultimate nitric oxide powerhouse, packed with over 50 premium ingredients, including L-arginine, L-citrulline, organic beets, and vital vitamins like D, B, and other potent antioxidants. Cardio Miracle fuels your body's nitric oxide production. Now, why does this matter? Nitric oxide relaxes blood vessels, enhances circulation, lowers blood pressure, and supercharges energy and stamina. Inspired by Nobel Prize-winning science, this cutting-edge formula delivers dual pathway nitric oxide support for sharper focus, faster recovery, and healthier heart. More people die of heart-related issues than anything else. Keep your heart running smooth and your blood vessels elastic and healthy. Check out the link below to learn more and pick some up today. This drink is specifically helpful for people over age 50, but I love it so much I drink it 7 days a week. Check out the link down below.
Uh, I think they're obviously right to be on a high alert level. I personally doubt that they would actually attempt to do that. And I would need to know more than I do about the power structure there, which obviously has been severely shaken by the events of the last month. I mean, many of the senior people have been dispensed with militarily. But if there is any evidence, and there has been some in the past, as you know, if there is any going forward that the Iranian government is actually attempting to endanger or take the life of the president, that is an act of war that would justify a direct takeout of the Iranian leadership and a full-scale attack, at least from the air. I don't think anyone wants boots on the ground, but from the air, and the airspace of Iran is wide open now, thanks to the Israelis. Just to make a real effort to take down the regime. You've hit all the barracks of the Revolutionary Guard, and you do everything you can to respond to an attempted assassination of the president. If there's any evidence that they attempt to do that, that is an act of war that should be responded to as an act of war.
Yeah, on the one hand, you don't want to take it lightly. So I'm glad that they're on high alert. We don't really know who's in the country because of Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if I know President Trump, he's going to continue to do what he does, which is go out and boldly.
He's a physically courageous man, and even his worst enemy can't deny that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I said the same about President Reagan when he walked into the operating room and said to all the doctors and nurses, "I hope you're Republicans." And he had a collapsed lung and a bullet in his chest. And I don't know that you or I or anyone else would have had the presence of mind after being shot in the ear and almost killed, saying, "Fight." I mean, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But he went on, and he knew that he was at some risk. But he spoke to these big rallies for the rest of that was in July, and he spoke to them right up to Election Day. So he's a brave man, and I think the country recognizes that. And other than the pathological Trump haters, they correctly admire him for it. I mean, you want a brave man in that job, and generally speaking, you have had them.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully, Secret Service will keep him safe. I believe.
Well, raise their game. They didn't play a starring role in Pennsylvania. I mean, that was a Mickey Mouse operation. This guy's standing out there, perfectly visible, for what, 15 minutes or something. I mean, frankly, I'm sitting in Toronto, Canada at the moment. The mayor of Toronto would have better security than that, and he's not under great threat.
Yeah, and still, all this time later, we don't know anything about this young man. His body was secretly burned by the FBI. I mean, there are just so many weird things about it.
I think we can rely on Mr. Patel to do everything he can to get to the bottom of things. I think that the security apparatus of the country is now in very good hands. That's not a partisan comment. I think you've got people who know they're serving the people, not running a state within a state to accommodate a faction in the country. I mean, when I literally could not believe my ears, Stephen, when I saw, what would it be now, 8 years ago, James Clapper, the director of the National Intelligence Agency, announced that Donald Trump was an intelligence agent and asset of the Russian government. I mean, he should have been led away in a straitjacket to an asylum. I mean, that was I just couldn't believe my ears.
Yeah. Well, and how come the 51 that signed that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, knowingly that was a fake story approved at the highest level of the CIA, and none of them have gone to jail. Not, you know, I mean, President Trump stripped their
arranged, by
security
the way, by
clearance.
the immediate subsequent Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. He's the one who did the ring around to
Yes.
collect all these names. No, it's a shocker, and you know, it was hard to remember some of the stuff. It's so nonsensical, but he was actually impeached for a telephone call to the president of Ukraine, just asking, what is the true story of the Biden family's financial activities in Ukraine? He didn't say, look here, I want this guy's head in a plate. I don't care what the facts are. You know, give me a proper smear job I can use here. He didn't say anything like that. He said, what happened? And for that, he was impeached, which is nonsense. Of course, he wasn't convicted. But we now know, and I don't want to jump all over a man who's retired now and everything, but he was running an intercontinental influence peddling operation for decades. And you know, I mean, frankly, I'm not a Clinton basher at all. I like the Clintons personally, but you know, they were running a pay-to-play scheme through that foundation, and she eliminated 33,000 emails on improper servers, or they shouldn't have been in the first place, but she destroyed them when they were under subpoena. Now, you know, I'm not a particularly vindictive person. I wouldn't want to try and send the former Secretary of State to prison, but I mean, there should be some retribution here where it's announced that she actually did do a bad thing. I mean, you can let it go because of who she is, no problem with that. But she shouldn't be up here giving moralizing statements every few weeks comparing Trump to Hitler and outrageous things like that, which incidentally not only defames Trump, and not only whitewashes Hitler, but dishonors all the victims of Hitler and all those who fought against Hitler.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've felt that so many times where it's like, hey, listen, if you start comparing everyone to Hitler, suddenly Hitler's the average guy.
He's Mickey Mouse. He's
yeah,
nobody. He's a putz. You know, he's just an ineffectual, tedious little guy, not someone who murdered 12 million people in death camps and plunged the whole world into war.
Yeah. Okay, let me go over one more story with you that is out. So it looks like CNN has been doing these stories about an app that discloses where ICE raids are happening, so that Antifa and other groups can show up and protest and harass. And then they started connecting the dots and they realize, Homeland Security, Tom Homan, they start realizing, wait a minute, they're actually promoting this. It's kind of like a covert way of blocking President Trump and Tom Homan and ICE from safely doing their job. I mean, I feel like you're from the media. This is a really sneaky tactic to undermine the sitting president. Your thoughts on that?
Look, I have been, you know, I don't want to annoy your viewers. I'm not an American. And a few things are more annoying often than foreigners making gratuitous comments about your country. And it's, you know, all nationalities are familiar with that. But with that said, since you asked me, I was utterly horrified the first time I heard about a sanctuary city. And at that point, the borders were more or less maintained. And yet you had mayors of large cities announcing that they simply would not follow federal law on these matters. Well, as far as I was concerned, they should have been indicted. I mean, they were, in fact, committing a serious offense, and the writ of the federal government in your country and as other civilized countries must run throughout the country. I mean, if the Parliament of Canada or Great Britain passed some law about immigration and the mayor of Toronto or London said, well, I'm not paying any attention to that, this is a sanctuary, he'd be impeached and removed and charged. I mean, you just can't stand for that. And I'm all for, by the way, I think ICE should clean it up a bit. I am afraid of how poor the conditions are for people I have in detention. I'm afraid they're a little high-handed at times. I had no sympathy for that Albegra fellow, but the decision on him on the weekend did debunk to a significant degree some of the claims made about him. And I think I have great admiration for Mr. Homan, and what he's doing is terribly necessary. But I think they want to be careful to cover their flank on the human rights, civil rights side of things. But with that said, they've only tried to deport 100,000 people so far out of something on the order of 15 million illegal entries. Now, in my own view, if the people entered illegally but are gainfully employed, lawfully employed, well settled, not a charge on the country, I'd fast track them in instead of trying to throw them out. But if they're lawbreakers, I don't mean jaywalking, I mean serious lawbreakers, they've got to go. They've got to go. And any person, any official anywhere, even the mayor of your greatest cities, if they stand in the way of that, they should be charged.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I'm totally, completely shocked at these people that you're producing as mayors in these big cities. I mean, I know Michael Bloomberg, I know Rudy Giuliani, I knew Ed Koch, I knew both Richard Daley's. I mean, give them, they were, you can say lots of things about all of them, but they were serious, competent mayors. I mean, what on earth are we coming to?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you there, but I do agree with you. In our final minutes, tell me, you've got a new book out. Tell my audience about that, and then I'll put a direct link to it.
That's kind of it. Well, I'm a biographer, and then I wrote a history of the U.S. and a history of Canada, and then I took it upon myself to write a political and strategic history of the world. And I just published the second volume, but it happens here. And this is embarrassing, and I'm ashamed to do it. It's so déclassé and down market. But these are the volumes here. Am I getting there?
Yep.
There. And the blue one is the volume 2 that's just out. Okay. But that gets you from, you see the faces of the people there are Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Socrates, Moses, and on the other side, Cardinal Richelieu, Queen Elizabeth I, Genghis Khan, and Charlemagne. But it gets you all the way up to the end of the 17th century, and I will produce the final volume in a few months. But they are big books, but it's the history of the world. You don't have to read 40 volumes and spend 20 years doing it like the ones behind me here, which I read. To do that, it's you focus on the personalities, because people make history. We're not just corks floating on the water, move this way and that because of cultural or scientific trends. And the personalities are interesting, whether they're good people or terrible people or in between. They're interesting, the important ones, and it is manageable. And you know, if you've got the book, it's got a good index. If you just want to look up, let's say, Queen Elizabeth I, and in a way where she's in context, you can see what came before her and why what happened after her happened. You can do it. So I'm just trying to make the case that the history of the world as a subject, the political history, this isn't a cultural history or a scientific history. It's a history of organization politically and relations between groups of collectivities, countries. It's not that intimidating, and you can actually get a feel for it. That's what the point. It's not for me to judge if I've succeeded. It's like a guy signing his own expense account, but the reviews have been complimentary so far.
Okay, I'm going to put direct links to that.
It's the political and strategic history of the world, volumes 1 and 2, and they're quite well available. Okay. Yeah, the 2 on the left there.
Yeah, and then you also wrote Donald J. Trump, a president like no other. So I'll put direct links to that so that people can find it very easily. Lord Conrad Black, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me as a guest. I'll put those direct links down below. We'll have you on again. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks very much. Very nice talking with you.